Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Welcome back to day 9 on the Viking expedition ship Octantis on the Antarctic Explorer cruise. Today we woke up at Enterprise Island and we did a Zodiac boat exploration. So the Zodiac boat tour was about an hour and a half total. There were no shore stops, so we needed to dress warm, wear the whole waterproof pants and rubber boots and everything. As a side note, I've gotten a lot of questions in the comments about the cold weather gear. Do we need to bring all the stuff that they recommend? Is it enough? Things like that. So, in general, I would say yes. While you won't need everything all the time, in particular when you go on special op boat excursion rides, those boats can get going pretty fast and they have open sides, so it can get quite cold. So, I recommend pretty much everything for those trips. So, in our case, that was long john pants, jeans over the top of those pants, Viking waterproof pants over that, then sock liners, thick hiking socks, waterproof boots that come from Viking. And then on top, we wore a thermal shirt or a long john type shirt, a long sleeve regular shirt, then the black Viking undercoat, I call it, and then the red Viking waterproof coat. And then at the top, we went with a neck gaiter. The cap that I've discussed in a previous video, we went with a different cap from their recommendation. And then glove liners and gloves. That may seem like overkill, but we were never too hot after we left the ship. I will say that you should not put on the gloves, the neck gaiter, or the cap until you're like waiting in line ready to board a boat to get off the ship, or you will get warm standing around the boat with all that gear on. I did not wear glove liners after my first try because it made using my camera and my phone too hard. But honestly, I did pay a price of cold hands a couple of times for that decision. So I would go with everything they recommend and then just kind of vary it based upon what type of expedition you're doing. So the groups for the rib boat excursion started at 7:15 and varied all the way till a little bit after 11 o'clock. Ours was a 9 a.m. meeting, and we had to meet, like everybody, in the landing area, which is on deck A midship. And after we got down and got in line and got on the boat, we headed out with a guide on the boat to kind of explore the area. Our first stop was to visit a couple of chinstrap penguins that were just walking around in the snow and enjoying themselves. After that, we headed off to see a large cormorant nesting area. And you'll notice that these look a lot like penguins from a distance as you approach, but the key giveaway is the longer necks. So when you get closer, you'll see the difference. But they do look a lot like them. Then we noticed a fur seal laying out on a rock, just kind of relaxing. We sat around for a minute watching him. He really didn't seem to pay much attention to us. And then finally, the big attraction here at Enterprise Island is a grounded whaling ship from 1915 called the Guvernoren. There's quite a history behind it, a story behind it, but I don't want to spoil it for you. You'll hear all about it from your boat guide, how the ship ended up here and what happened to the crew. It's really interesting to hear it described while you're actually seeing the results of it right in front of your eyes. It's pretty impressive, and considering this all happened more than 100 years ago. Following that, we spent some time out exploring the glacier face from the boat. You could see these deep fractures in the ice, and we kind of tooled around the area looking at various icebergs. We saw this amazing blue iceberg. This image is not touched up at all. Our guide told us that when the sky is overcast like this, that it really brings out the blues in the iceberg. So it was kind of neat that it was overcast because this iceberg was really impressive. It stood out. What's amazing to me is when you consider that up to 90% of the iceberg is actually underwater, just how amazingly huge these things are, because the part that we were looking at that you're seeing here above the water is very large. And then another iceberg we ran into on the way back to the ship, didn't run into it, but saw it, was this one here that you can see kind of these neat lines or bands on it, And there the various water lines as the iceberg shifts and rotates and flips as it melts. So it's kind of neat to see the different lines that used to be the water line. After that, we headed back to the Octantis. And we did a little bit of exploring around the ship. I'm just going to show you a couple of the areas that we walked through. This is the internal staircase. And I show it just because it's slightly different from the layout on the ocean ships and the river ships. Obviously the river ships, but it's a little bit different than the ocean ships. And this area here is kind of a lounge area where this is a large screen TV, and they actually, showed the NFL championship game here live this evening on the ship. Then we walked through the Explorer's Lounge and went up to the front view of the ship. You can see the chairs all lined up along the front. It's kind of a nice place to relax and take in the scenery, particularly when the ship's underway. And we walked back through the lounge area where there's puzzle tables, there's a bar, there's seating for the large screen TV. Then we walked through the Mamson's seating area, kind of one of the restaurant options. And this is the food in the Mamson's area. And then finally we walked through what they call Expedition Central, which is where you can go and ask people questions or find out about what's going on with various excursions and things. And here it's kind of neat. You get a view down through the 2 floors into the midship rib boat loading area. They have glass floor openings. A little bit after this, we actually had a pretty unique experience. The ship stopped due to the fact that there were a large number of whales in multiple groups around the ship, probably 10 or 15 whales in total, broken up into a couple different groups. And they told us they call this whale soup when they're just so thick around the ship that they have to stop the ship. So the bow deck was a great place to watch from when this happened. You'll see some pictures here of the groups that were gathered out there. And it was just really impressive. The water was really still, and you can see the whales just surfacing and playing around in the water. The Viking staff actually came out and launched a drone to go get some video of it. Too bad you can't bring your own drone on the ship, but they have theirs. And then after that, we finally departed to head off towards South Shetland Islands. That night we went to Manfredi's for dinner. It's probably one of our favorite, it is definitely our favorite reservation required restaurant between the 2 options. And I think we had 3 different nights we made reservations at Manfredi's. Very good food. And there are also quite a few options of things to do during the day today that we didn't take part in all of them. But as I mentioned, the special ops boats, there's kayak rides today. There was a talk on icebergs by Professor Julian Dowdswell. There was a talk on krill by Judith Scott. There's the ever-present daily briefing. They had a movie in the Aula called Arctic at 8 o'clock tonight. I mentioned the Bengals versus Chiefs NFL championship game was on live in the living room. They also made an announcement, and this is a bit unusual. I had a couple questions on this, that tomorrow, day 10, there's not going to be any internet, and that's because we're kind of heading in an open stretch out back towards the Shetland Islands. In general, I've been pretty impressed with the internet access. For the most part, we've had a couple of spotty areas here and there, but for the most part, every day, we've had pretty good internet access to the ability to upload our pictures and videos back to the cloud to save them and email people and things like that. Hasn't been a problem. So only one more day of shore excursions on this trip. We departed in the afternoon, as I said, towards the South Shetland Islands, and we'll cover that in the next video. Talk to you soon. Thanks.